the Arabian Racehorse Podcast with Debbie Burst and Gary Capel.
Hello, and welcome to another edition of the Arabian Racing Podcast. This week we'll be covering three races, the first of which will be our most recent race, the Racing to School Inspiring Young Minds 0 to 60 handicap, which was run at Wolverhampton on Monday. That was an impressive win by Seraphim Forte. He's clearly a progressive young horse and going in the right direction. And obviously, you know, although he had Alex Chadwick's claim, you know, he was at the top of the handicap, so he's giving weight away. So, you know, that was a fair performance, I thought.
Yeah, it was. And he could have been called the winner a good way from home as well, couldn't he? One or two of them didn't travel particularly well through the race, but Seraphim Forte certainly did. And he took up the running a fair way from home, Alex Chadwick. The fact that he gets to ride quite a lot of these horses at home, I think is a huge plus, given the truncated season that we've had. And the fact that, yeah, I'm sure that he's ridden this horse quite a lot at home. But even still, I mean, you know, a 3-year-old carrying, the best part of 10 stone against older horses, more experienced horses. The way that he went through the race, quickened away, okay, he was maybe getting a bit tired close home, but I think he was entitled to that. I thought it was a clever ride and a nice performance from a horse that's obviously only had a few starts and continues to progress. And will be interesting to see where we see this horse, particularly next season with another winter on the horse's back.
I couldn't agree more, Gary. And speaking to Alex after the race, he says actually he's quite buzzy at home, and he takes him out early in the morning when it's dark and he's not going to see many horses. So, you know, as you say, another winter on his back looks like quite an exciting prospect for next year, I think.
Yeah, it'd be interesting to see if they've got a sort of a long-term plan with him. I have a sort of race in mind where I think he might well end up. Whether he does go there or not, I'm not just sure, but I can see there being a long-term target for the horse. Let's put it that way.
Oh, absolutely. And of course, it's a first UK winner for the sire Sadim, which stands at Forte Stud. And he is, of course, he's a half brother to Sartageno, who you might remember, who was a 3-time Group 3 winner at 10 furlongs. So, you know, clearly on pedigree, he's going to be suited by that distance.
Yeah, very much so. I don't think, you know, he was committed a fair way from home, wasn't he? But even at this stage of his career, the fact that he stays so well is a plus. And yeah, I'm sure they won't be scared of stepping the horse up in trip next season.
Absolutely. And in behind, we had Samawat, who was making a first run for Peter Hammersley, still obviously in ownership of the Connolly's, and Zayn Zyperian, who again didn't quite get a clear run through. There's a race for him soon at some point, isn't there?
Yeah, very much so. With Samawat, that was much more like it. Obviously, she started her career at Shadwell, and we haven't seen sort of too much promise the last couple of seasons. The handicap mark has dropped down to a very decent mark, and obviously she hasn't been with Peter Hammersley that long, but that was much more like it, and she kept on quite willingly in the closing stages, and there's no doubt that she's well handicapped if Connections can find a race for her. The horses in behind her, Zayn Zyperian, as you mentioned, didn't get the best of luck in running. Not for the first time, unfortunately, but I see that he's entered again fairly shortly, so we might well see him sooner rather than later. More on that fairly shortly. And Jemana Athbar was, again, just kept going in the close, or kept on quite well in the closing stages without really looking like threatening. But again, it was a decent effort from that horse for the grade, and I'm sure they'll manage to place that horse to win a race at some point over maybe not this season, but perhaps next season. Kayak, perhaps a little bit disappointing from him. He didn't get to the front, which perhaps may well be the best sort of tactic for him, I think, maybe going forward, because if you know, that horse I think is all about stamina. So if they try and utilise that, I think if he was to be able to be ridden a bit more positive, that might well suit him. Slightly better from Gurko the Tunnel. Best effort from that horse since coming here over to the UK. Again, likely enough raced enough that kind of handicap mark to think that, you know, again, whether we see a bit better from that horse perhaps next season. Slightly disappointing from Zane's Achilles, I think, and Popstar, perhaps more so, never really travelled, which was a little bit disappointing.
Absolutely. Going back to Gurkha Tanal, I had a very brief word with Jamie Plum after the race, and I think it's taken the horse a bit of time to settle into the UK. And I think that whilst he might not be a world beater, I certainly think with another winter and time to acclimatise to the UK, we'll see a bit more from him next season.
Yeah, agreed. And I should imagine they'll probably keep Ellen Mackenzie on board. She's ridden the horse a few times now, so she will know the horse perhaps next season, when, as you say, when the horse has got to acclimatise that a little bit more. And with Arabian racing terms, he's still quite a young horse, isn't he?
Absolutely. And if we now move on to our next race, which will be tomorrow at Chelmsford City, we go back there for the Bailey's Horse Feeds Condition Stakes to be run over 7 furlongs. Disappointing that we've only got 5 runners, but at the same time, the quality of the field is excellent, really, for this sort of race. And it's headed by Stormtrooper. He's the only group winner in the race, and of course, he's a former course and distance winner back in 2017 when Millie Nasser won a Sheikh Fatima race on him, an apprentice race. So yes, if we start there, Gary.
Yeah, course form always a plus at Chelmsford. I think it's fair to say the fact that this horse we know handles conditions is obviously going to be a plus. He is one of the likely pace angles in the race. You often think small fields, it could get quite tactical. It could easily still do so. And I always think, particularly when you watch some of the thoroughbred racing at Chelmsford, as though it's certainly an advantage to race prominently. But he's not alone in the fact that he likes to make the running. Tajari's made the running in the past. Al-Aziz has made all of the running in the past as well. So he might not get his own way out in front, but if he does, it will obviously enhance his chance.
Absolutely. And so moving through that, obviously of great interest to me because he won my Arabian Racehorse maiden earlier in the year, is Tufan. Obviously, he's the youngest horse in the race. He can do no more than win. I think, obviously, the form of that race has been franked by the second Wanasa, who came out and won very well at the previous Bailey-sponsored race at Chelmsford, which earned quite a compliment from trainer James Owen, who said she was the fastest Arabian he's trained so far. So you'd have to think that he's capable of certainly stepping up to this level of company. Interesting to note that his Dam Zakia also won over 7 furlongs. And funny enough, she, stepping up to a mile and a quarter, she ended up being 4th in the Hatter to Makifa, who obviously went on to win the Arabian World Cup out in Paris. So, there's solid claims on his breeding. And obviously, you can do no more than win. And in that race that he won, of course, was Seraphim Forta, who finished 8th, who we've just reviewed winning recently. So he's certainly got a good chance. And obviously, as you say, Al-Aziza, who was your pick out of the 5, she's been in great form this season in Belgium.
Yeah, she has. She's won her last 2 starts, beating obviously a couple of the rivals she's going to face on Thursday afternoon. Yeah, she's gone through those races very, very nicely, and I think she's been well placed by James Owen. Obviously, Tajari was behind her on one of those occasions, wasn't beaten too far, and Stormtrooper was behind her on the other occasion. So, I mean, like I say, tactics are going to play a huge part in this race. Jim Crowley's obviously been booked to ride Al-Aziza. He obviously rode the horse to victory at Newbury on Dubai International Arabian Race Day last year. So he knows her. I think she is the one to beat. Wouldn't be completely discounting Tijari, who's another horse I think will be happy on this surface. Tufan, who you mentioned, I was impressed with how he went through his racecourse debut at Wolverhampton. As you said, the form has already been franked on a couple of occasions. Technically speaking, okay, it's a conditions race, but this is kind of a step up in grade for the horse. But he's the most likely race and open to the most improvement. So it wouldn't be surprised if he was up to the task. And Abaya Athbar, another horse who could also be ridden fairly prominently, perhaps, particularly because she's stepping down in trip, and ideally, for all that, I don't think this trip will be an issue. Perhaps the best form that we've seen from her so far has been over slightly further. So if they go a decent gallop, it will definitely suit her. And Joey Haynes obviously knows her well, having ridden her to victory at Lingfield last year. So It's a fascinating race. I couldn't discount any of the quintet. It'll be fascinating from a tactical point of view, who makes the running, etc., and how the race might pan out. But I did select Al Aziza, and yeah, she remains my pick. She's favoured by how the weights have worked out for this particular contest as well.
Absolutely. And I spoke to Peter Hammersley earlier today, and we'll hear from him now about Bia Athba's chances, and also looking ahead to our next race on Saturday, which is the Equine Medi Record handicap over just short of a mile and 2 furlongs back at Wolverhampton.
Good morning, Debbie. Nice speaking to you again. Well, we've got the race tomorrow at Chelmsford, the Bailey's Horse Feeds Condition Stakes over 7 furlongs. Only 5 runners, but looks like it's going to be a fantastic race. 5 quality horses. Really looking forward to it. We've got a Bia Athba in it. She'll be trying the trip for the first time. She's never run over a distance less than a mile. But that just shows you the way Arabians can adapt to all different trips. She's won over a mile and a half, ran over a mile and a half last time in a high grade handicap, carrying loads of weight, which I think was probably the problem, that she struggled a little bit at the end. But I'm really looking forward to seeing her run over 7 furlongs. Her dam was a speed demon. Burning Fancy won a Group 3 at Lingfield over 5 furlongs. Made all, so should be really interesting. I'm really looking forward to that, and hopefully it's a really good race, and they all come back safe and sound. Moving on to Saturday, we've got the 0 to 70 handicap, the Equine Medi Record handicap at Wolverhampton. I think I've declared 5. I had my 5-a-side team out Monday, and they mostly ran really well. Declared 5 this time. I've made a late substitution. I'm putting El Tabari on. He scored last time, so I'm hoping that he might be able to score again. But we've got another 2 in it. Really pleased with Samawat the other day. She stepped forward on a previous few runs, so hoping that she might be able to go one better. And Zane's Hyperion, the same for him. He's run 2 lovely races the last couple of times. So and we've got Zane's Achilles will be having his last run, and we'll see how he goes. Bin Al-Ri, I haven't seen the entries yet, so batting in the dark a little bit, but we've got the 5, and I think if it was a poker hand, I think I'd probably have a full house. Aces over jacks probably. As I say, I haven't seen the entries, so I wouldn't know whether I've got the best hand or not, but I think I'd take a chance going all in blind, to be honest. So anyway, hopefully it's another good race, and all of them come back safe and sound.
Okay, and now we look ahead to that race, the Equine Medi Record Handicap Stakes, which is a 0 to 70 run over a mile and 1.5 furlongs at Wolverhampton, headed by recent course winner Arwen Forter, although she was a little bit disappointing last time, stepped up to 1.5 miles, Gary.
Yeah, I suppose that was in a slightly better race than this, perhaps. But yes, that was, based on her previous run, a little bit disappointing. Interesting to see who rides her, but yeah, she's got top weight or joint top weight potentially to shoulder in this race, but it is a slight step down in grade for her, and she's open to a bit of improvement still as well. That said, in the context of this race, she's not alone in that respect.
Absolutely. And we've got for Nicky Thorne, Falcon de Roche, who's making his seasonal reappearance. Although possibly, again, a horse which didn't quite progress last year as we might have hoped. His maiden, which he actually ran here over course and distance, turns out that of the 5 horses to contest it, all 4 other horses have gone on to win. Abir Athbar being one who we just spoke about. Jahez, who later on won last year quite well and also ran well overseas. And then in 4th was Al Bustan, who went on to win at Chelmsford, and of course Arwen Forter, who we've just talked about. So if he can draw back on that form on the first run of the season, he might be a little more interesting than based on his previous runs.
Yeah, and he's got a bit of course form as well, hasn't he? He wasn't beaten too far behind Callie May here last season on his handicap debut. He beat a couple of horses that may well reoppose that day. Zane's Achilles and Samawati finished in front of that pair, and indeed Bin Al Ree on that particular occasion. Open to plenty of improvements, only had the 4 career starts, and this is perhaps the easiest task that the horse has had to date. So open to lots of improvement, having only had 4 career starts as well. So he's definitely an interesting contender.
I couldn't agree more. And of course, now we've got 5 runners from Peter Hammersley stable. Obviously, we've just heard from Pete earlier, but again, you know, Zayn Cyperian, he's been knocking on the door for his last 2 runs. You'd hope that he might get some more luck in running, but you know, it could be that it may be Al Tabari or indeed Samawat, who, as we discussed, made a big jump forward in her first run for Pete's stable.
Yeah, very much so. Be interesting to see if that run is replicated. It's a fairly quick turnaround, I suppose, isn't it? But if she's fit and healthy, I don't see why you wouldn't run her. Obviously, Al Tabari won here last time out. He's, again, another one that's fairly lightly raced in the context of this contest. So is open to improvement, was given a very cool ride last time out as well. You've got the Zayn horses. Zane's Achilles, that we mentioned earlier, was slightly disappointing, I think, just earlier on in the week, and Zane's Hyperion, who didn't get perhaps the best of luck in running, obviously on Monday. So those 2 are interesting as well. And Bin Al Ree, one day he'll pop up, but trying to work out when that might be isn't the easiest, because he often runs on quite well in his races, doesn't he? So yeah, Peter Hammersley's got a strong hand. In what, the more you look at it, probably there's reasons for thinking, you know, quite a few of them could run well. So it might be a bit more open than the numbers suggest.
Yeah, I agree, Gary. It does look quite open, and with horses dropping down in trip from their most recent runs. But again, it is pretty much a rerun of the race we had on Monday. Also, possibly joining in, we have Mawarid for James Owen. He's been a tricky little customer, hasn't he, really? It would be nice to think that he might rekindle some form, but not one that I'd want to get involved with this time.
No, I think that's fair. I should imagine he's been quite a frustrating horse for connections. I think there's a good bit of ability there. He can often play up a little bit in the stalls, as we've seen before. He didn't actually do that, I don't think, last time out, but even still, I think it was a slightly below par effort. But he's certainly better than what we have seen so far this season, I think it's fair to say. And
also completing the field down the bottom, we have Dina Bint Crayan. Career best performance last time. Obviously, it's going to be hard for her to win this from out of the handicap, but it does at least look like she could has the potential to move forward perhaps next year in a slightly less competitive environment.
Yeah, hopefully so. Just need to step forward a little bit on what we have seen thus far, and it's never easy from that far out of the weights, is it? But yeah, she's only had the 7 or 8 career starts, so at least she has got a little bit more improvement to come at some stage, hopefully.
Marvellous. And then, of course, that is our penultimate race. And we've got one more to come, which will be back at Wolverhampton the following week. And we'll be reviewing these 2 races that we've just been talking about and looking forward to our end of season finale at Wolverhampton. Thanks very much, Gary.
Thank you.